We left off with the entrance of Proctor. So let me see if I can get us that part. What had happened is the whole first act takes place in the room where the sick girl Betty is laying. She's the daughter of Paris. And down in the parlor, a bunch of people from the town have come in, and we've seen as rumors have started spreading, and like Mercy comes in and says she's a maid for the Putnams, that there's talk of witchcraft, and so and also that Ruth has become sick. So Abigail's very frightened at this, and she tries to wake up Betty, and then she talks to the other girls, and in private, because there's nobody else in the room except Betty, who's laying in her bed. And she says we have to get our story straight and don't say to anyone that we were doing conjuring, right? That we're just out dancing in the forest, and that was it, right? And so Betty is terrified, and she wakes up screaming, and she says, I saw Indians smash my parents' heads on a pillow neck. Oh, this is Abigail, sorry. And she says, how, don't you think you're going to get away with anything? I saw my Indians smash my parents' head on the pillow next to mine. So if you think you can scare me, you're wrong. I've already lived through a bunch. And then Betty collapses back on her hands and lays inert on the bed. Mary Warren said, what she got? Abigail stares at frightened at Betty. Abby, she's going to die. It's a sin to conjure. And then Abigail turns to Mary and yells, I say, shut up, Mary Warren. Then John Proctor enters. And on seeing him, Mary Warren screams in fright. So Proctor is a man in his 30s. He may not have been a partisan of any faction in the town, but there's evidence to suggest that he's just sharp and biting way with hypocrites. So in other words, he doesn't like hypocrites. He's a very plain spoken, right to the truth kind of guy. And he was a kind man, powerful in body, even tempered, not easily led, who cannot refuse support to partisans without drawing their deepest resentment. So he doesn't like people who have paid for political positions, and he makes them angry by stating his opinions. In Proctor's presence, a fool felt his foolishness instantly, and a Proctor is always marked for calumny, therefore. So he's always marked as one who will get in trouble because they know that he's an honest, straightforward man. And some people don't like honesty. But as we shall see, the steady manner he displays does not spring from an untroubled soul. He's a sinner not only against the moral fashion of the time, but against his own vision of decent conduct. These people had no rituals for washing away their sins. That means, like, if you're in the Catholic Church, you can go and confess and get rid of your sin. Or if you're an evangelicist, you can get bathed and washed away your sins. Or you're Baptist, you can get bathed and wash away your sins. But there's nowhere in the Puritan church that allows for washing away of sin. So he has this huge sin he carries around, and he doesn't have a way to get rid of it. The people had no ritual for washing away sins. It is another trait we inherited from them, and it was helped to discipline us as well as to breed hypocrisy among us. So this is Arthur Miller making a commentary about American society, because we are all, our society is descended from the Puritan tradition. Proctor, respected and feared in Salem, has come to regard himself as a kind of fraud, but no hint of this has yet appeared on the surface. As he entered from the crowded parlor below, it is a man in his prime we see, with great confidence and an unexpressed hidden force. Mary Warden, his servant, can barely speak for embarrassment and fear. So Mary Warren was not supposed to leave the house, and she's supposed to be on duty at the house. She's paid to be there working, and instead she's like running around with the teenagers gossiping about what happened. So here, people do a lot of interpretation of like one-liners from this play, and here Kathy Wood said, this may be a metaphor for all the ills that simmer below the surface in Salem. So there's a bunch of people down in the parlor, and they're all talking about whether or not this is witchcraft. There are interpersonal feuds and grudges over property, religious offices, and sexual behavior, which have begun to simmer beneath the theocratic surface. These tensions, combined with the paranoia about supernatural forces, pervade the town's religious sensibility and provide the raw materials for the hysteria of the witch trials. All right, so this is in the parlor below. There's a whole crowd talking about what's going on. We need direction from our minister. And up above, the minister's daughter's in her bed, and all the scenes that we have seen, all the things that have occurred so far in Act One have taken place on that. That's the stage setting for Act One. The big bedroom upstairs where Betty lies sick. So downstairs in the parlor is a bunch of people though. Mary Warren, oh, I'm just going home, sir, now. And in this action, Mary is sweet and submissive like a house servant. Very shortly, she's transformed into a sniveling, sneaking, lying, backstabbing, vicious member of Abby's clique, posse, gang, what have you, right? So she is acting like a little sweet little girl now to her boss, Mr. Proctor. Proctor, be you foolish, Mary Warren? Be you deaf? I forbid you to leave the house, did I not? Why shall I pay you? I am looking for you more often than my cows. And then Mary Warren says, I only came to see the great doings of the world. And Proctor says, I'll show you some great doing on your arse for one of these days. Now get you home. My wife's waiting for you to do work. Trying to retain a shred of dignity, Mary Warren leaves slowly. Mercy Lewis, both afraid of him and strangely titillated, I'd best be off. So she's excited too, and she says, I better go too. I have my Ruth to watch. So that is Putnam's daughter, Putnam's servant, and she's going back to watch Ruth, who's the other girl that's under a spell. Mercy sidles out. Since Proctor's entrance, Abigail has stood as though on tiptoe, absorbing his presence wide-eyed. So she's in love with him. He glances at her, then at Betty on the bed. And Abigail says, yeah, I almost forgot how strong you are, John Proctor. And then Proctor turns and looks at Abigail. So she buttering up to him, give him a big compliment, right? Looking at Abigail, the faintest suggestion of a knowing smile on his face. What's this mischief here? What are you doing? And then Abigail says with a nervous laugh, oh, she's only gone silly somehow. And then Proctor says, road to my house is a pilgrimage to Salem all morning. The town's mumbling witchcraft. Then Abigail says, oh, posh. Winningly, she comes a little closer with a confidential, wicked air. We were dancing in the woods last night. My uncle leaped in on us. She took fright, that's all. And then Proctor smiling, his smile widening. Oh, you're a wicked one, aren't you? A trill of unexpected laughter escapes from her, and she dares come closer, feverishly looking into his eyes. You'll be clapped in stocks before you're 20, he says. He takes a step to go, and she springs into his path. Give me a word, John, a soft word. Her concentrated desire destroys his smile. No, Abby, no, that's done with. Tauntingly, she says, you come 5 miles to see a silly girl fly? I know better than that. And then Proctor says, setting her firmly out of his path, I come to see what mischief your uncle's brewing now. And then with great emphasis, put it out of your mind, Abby. And then Abby, grasping her hand before she can release it, John, I am waiting for you every night. Abby, I never gave you hope to wait for me, right? So they had an affair, and she's like still hoping for it. Proctor is uneasy with himself because he had conducted an extramarital affair with Abigail. His wife Elizabeth did discover the affair and promptly dismissed Abigail from the work in the Proctor home. Abigail now beginning to anger. She can't believe it. I have something better than hope, I think. Abby, you'll put it out of your mind. I'll not be coming for you. So he's saying the affair's over, right? Abigail has fallen in love with Proctor, but Proctor clearly doesn't feel that way. I guess that's supposed to be in, well, that is funny. You're surely sporting with me. You know me better. I know how you clutched my back behind your house and sweated like a stallion whenever I came near you. Or did I dream it? It's she that put me out. You cannot pretend it were you. I saw your face when she put me out. You loved me then and you love me now. Abby, that's a wild thing to say. A wild thing may say wild things, but not so wild, I think. I have seen you since she put me out. I've seen you at night, right? And then she says, I've not stepped a foot off the farm in 7 months. I have a sense for heat, John, and yours has drawn me to my window, and I have seen you looking up, burning at my in your loneliness. Do you tell me you've never looked up at my window? I may have looked up. So he admits that he is immoral and has been immoral, and this is very hard because he's trying to end it for his wife's sake. And now she softens, Abigail, and you must. You are no wintry man. That means you're not a cold guy. You're a passionate man. I know you, John. I know you. She's weeping. I cannot sleep for dreaming. I cannot dream, but I wake and walk about the house as though I'd find you coming through some door. She clutches him desperately. Proctor gently pressing her from him with great sympathy, but firmly. Child. Abigail with a flash of anger. I'm not a child. And then Proctor says, Abby, I think of you softly from time to time, but I will cut off my hand before I reach for you again. Wipe it out of your mind. We never touched Abby. We did. But we did not. Abigail with great anger. Oh, I marvel how such a strong man may have such a sickly wife. And then now Proctor's angry. He says, you'll speak nothing of Elizabeth. That's his wife. Abigail says, she's blackening my name in the village. She's telling lies about me. She's a cold, sniveling woman. And you bend to her. Let her turn you like a, right? And so she's saying things about his wife, shaking her. Do you look for a whipping? A psalm is heard being sung below. Abigail in tears. I look for John Proctor that took me from my sleep and put knowledge in my heart. That's cardinal knowledge. I've never knew that what pretense Salem was. I never knew the lying lessons I was taught by all these Christian women and all their convenated men. And now you bind me, tear the light out of my eyes. I will not, I cannot. You love me, John Proctor, whatever sin it is, you love me yet. He turns abruptly to go out. She rushes to him. John, pity me, pity me. The words going up to Jesus are heard in the psalm. And Betty clasps her ears suddenly and whines and cries. Uh-oh, she can't hear the Lord's prayer. Abigail runs over to her. Betty! She hurries to Betty, who is now sitting up screaming. Proctor goes to Betty as Abigail is trying to pull her down, hands down. Betty! Proctor growing unnerved. What's she doing? Girl, what ails you? Stop that wailing. The singing has stopped in the midst of this, and now Parrish rushes in. What happened? What are you doing to her? Betty! He rushes to her bed, crying, Betty, Betty! Mrs. Putnam enters, feverish with curiosity, and with her husband, Thomas Putnam, and Mercy Lewis, their maid. Paris at the bed keeps lightly slapping Betty's face. This is a good thing to do. Oh, I don't know if I showed you that film clip where they, on the airplane, they slap that girl to get her out of it. I think I did. Very funny stuff. Anyway, slapping her to get her out of it while she moans and tries to get up. Abigail says she heard you singing and suddenly she was screaming, the psalm, the psalm. She cannot bear to hear the Lord's name. This is a sure sign of witchcraft. This is bad stuff. Paris. No, God forbid. Mercy, run for the doctor. Tell him what's happened here. Mercy Lewis rushes. Well, Mercy Lewis rushes out. This is Putnam. Mark, it's a sign. Mark it. And then Rebecca Nurse, who's 72, enters. She is white-haired, leaning upon a walking stick. Putnam, pointing to the whimpering Betty. This is a notorious sign of witchcraft afoot. Goody Nurse, a prodigious sign. And then Mrs. Putnam. My mother told me that when they cannot hear the Lord's name. Parrish trembling. Rebecca, Rebecca, go to her. We're lost. She suddenly cannot bear to hear the Lord's name. Now Giles Corey, says the bedroom's full of people. Giles Corey, who's 83, enters. He is knotted with muscle and caney and inquisitive and still powerful. Rebecca, there is a hard sickness here, Giles Corey. So please keep quiet, Giles. I've not heard a word. No one here can testify I've said a word. Is she going to fly again? I hear she flies. Putnam says, man, be quiet now. Everything is quiet. Rebecca walks across the room to the bed. Gentleness exudes from her. Betty is quietly whimpering, eyes shut. Rebecca simply stands over the child, who gradually quiets. And while they're all so absorbed, we may put in a word for the Rebecca. Rebecca was a wife of Francis Nurse, who, from all accounts, was one of those men from whom both sides of the argument had to have respect. He was called upon to arbitrate disputes as though he was an unofficial judge. And Rebecca also enjoyed the high opinion most people had for him. But the time of the delusion, they had 300 acres and their children were settled in separate households within the same estate. However, Francis had originally rented the land, and one theory has it that as he gradually paid for it and raised his social status, there were those who resented the fact that he was rising up in social circumstance. So let's see what this note said. Jealousy triggers hatred within Salem, as people cannot stand the success and fortunes of others. So this will be part of what fuels the hysteria at the witchcraft trials. There's petty disagreements, there's superstition, there's desire for payback, there's jealousy, there's all different things that go into why people are accused of witchcraft. Another suggestion is to explain the systematic campaign against Rebecca. What happens is Rebecca, she does get hanged for witchcraft, and she's an old woman. She was the midwife, Nurse Rebecca, and she is going to hang because people think she killed the babies that died in Salem. But of course, the infant mortality rate at that time was very high. So this was just all superstition. Anyway, another suggestion to explain the systematic campaign against Rebecca and inferentially against Francis is that land war he fought with his neighbors, one of whom was Putnam. The squabble grew to the proportions of a battle in the woods between partisans on both sides, and it is said to have lasted 2 days. As for Rebecca herself, the general opinion of her character was so high that to explain how anyone dared cry out against her as a witch, and more, how adults could bring themselves to lay hands on her, we must look at the fields and boundaries of the time. As you have seen, Thomas Putnam, a man for the Salem ministry, was Bailey. The Nurses clan had been a faction that prevented Bailey's taking office. In addition, certain families allied the Nurses by blood or friendship, and whose farms are contiguous with the Nurse farm or close by, and they combined to break away from the Salem authority and set up Topsfield, a new and independent entity whose existence has resented by old Salemites. That the guiding hand behind the outcry was the Putnams is indicated by the fact that as soon as it began, this Topfield Nurse faction absented themselves from church in protest and disbelief. It was Edward and Jonathan Putnam who signed the first complaint against Rebecca, and Thomas Putnam's little girl was the one who fell into a fit at the hearing and pointed to Rebecca as the attacker. To top it all, Mrs. Putnam, who is now staring at the bewitched child in the bed, soon accused Rebecca's spirit of tempting her to iniquity, a charge that had more truth in it than Mrs. Putnam could know. So they're saying that Mrs. Thomas Putnam's daughter, Ruth, is one of the people who is going to lay charges against Rebecca. Mrs. Putnam started, astonished. What have you done? Rebecca, in thought, now leaves the bedside and sits. Paris, wondrous and relieved. What do you make of it, Rebecca? Putnam eagerly. Goody, nurse. Will you go to my Ruth and see if you can wake her? Rebecca, sitting. I think she'll wake in time. Pray calm yourselves. I have 11 children, and I am 26 times a grandma, and I've seen them all through this silly season. And when it comes on them, they will run the devil bow-legged, keeping up with their mischief. I think she'll wake up as she tires of it. A child's spirit is like a child. You can never catch it by running after it. You must stand still, and for love, it will soon itself come back. Proctor says, that's the truth, Rebecca. And Mrs. Putnam says, "This is a silly season, Rebecca. My Ruth is bewildered, Rebecca, and she cannot eat." Then Rebecca says, "Perhaps she's not hungry yet." And then Rebecca says to Paris, "I hope you are not decided to go in search of loose spirits, Mr. Paris. I've heard promise of that outside. So that means I hope that you're not sending somebody who can come in looking for witches." Paris says, "A wide opinion's coming in the parish that the devil may be among us, and I would satisfy them that there's no wrong." Then Proctor asks if Paris consulted the legal authorities or a town meeting before he asked Reverend Hale to uncover the demons in Salem. There is a protocol that the minister is not just supposed to go and look for other authorities to come into town. They're supposed to go and have a town meeting and ask the town what they want. And Paris didn't do this. Did you consult the wardens before you called this minister to look for the devils? He's not coming to look for the devils. Then what's he coming for? There are children dying in the village, mister. I have seen none dying. This society will not be a bag to swing around your head, Mr. Putnam. And then to Paris, did you call a meeting before you and Mr. Putnam? I'm sick of meetings. Cannot the man turn his head without having a meeting? And then Proctor says he may turn his head, but not to hell, right? That means that they're looking to the devil, right? They're trying to find the devil, and that's in hell, right? So he can turn his head, but he shouldn't be looking for the devil. And then Rebecca say, "Pray, John, be calm, pause. He defers to me. Mr. Paris, I think you'd best send Reverend Hale back as soon as he comes. This will set us all arguing against the society, and we thought ourselves at peace this year. I think we ought to rely on the doctor now in good prayer." And then Mrs. Putnam says, "Rebecca, the doctor's baffled." And then Rebecca says, "If so he is, then let us go to God for the cause. There's a prodigious danger in seeking for loose spirits. It's a bad thing, and looking for loose spirits is not a good thing. I fear it. I fear it. Let us rather blame ourselves," right? And Rebecca shows her rationality by explaining how blaming others will only strike more fear, furthering the town's decline. However, this becomes an outrageous statement to other people here. And then Putnam says, "How do we blame ourselves? I am the one with 9 sons. The Putnam seed have peopled this province, and yet I have but 1 child left in 8, and now she shrivels." So he's saying, what are you saying, blame ourselves? Now, who was the nurse that birthed the birth of the 8 children who died? Rebecca Nurse, Goody Nurse. And they're going to blame her, saying that she had something to do with the death of their children. This is all coming. I cannot fathom that. And then Mrs. Putnam says with a growing edge of sarcasm, "But I must. You think it's God's work that you should never lose a child? And this is very dangerous." Mrs. Putnam is serving that death after birth of 7 children was due to witchcraft. The sarcasm may relate to the fact that Rebecca Nurse was a midwife who delivered those babies. And then nor a grandchild either. I will bury all at one. There are wheels within wheels in this village, fires within fires. So Rebecca Nurse up here, where she says, I have a lot of grandchildren, a lot of children. And now here, Mrs. Putnam's giving pushback and saying, "I only have 1 daughter. I have no grandchildren. Most of my babies are in the grave." All right, so now we go down. Mrs. Putnam says, or pardon me, Mr. Putnam says to Paris, "When Reverend Hale comes, you will proceed to look for signs of witchcraft here." And then Proctor to Putnam says, "You cannot command, Mr. Paris. We vote in the name of a society, not by acreage. Just because you own a lot of land, you're kind of wealthy, you don't get to call the shots, mister." That's what Proctor says to Putnam. Then Putnam says, "I never heard you worried so on this society, Mr. Proctor. I do not think I saw you in Sabbath meeting since the snow fell." So he's going, "I haven't seen you in church in a while, guy." And then Proctor says, "I have trouble enough without I have come 5 miles to hear him preach only hellfire and bloody damnation. Take it to heart, Mr. Paris. There are many others who stay away from the church these days because you hardly ever mention God anymore." So he says, "You're always talking about, it's like the sinners in the hands of the angry God. You want to go every Sunday and hear that, like how you're doomed to hell." So that's why Proctor says he's not going to church. And you're supposed to go to church. So then Paris says, "Why? What? That's a drastic charge." And then Rebecca says, "It's somewhat true, There are many that quell to bring their children. Like, in other words, you want to bring your child to church and hear about how you're a bunch of dirty sinners who are going to end up burning in hell." And then Paris says, I did not preach for children, Rebecca. It was not the children who are unmindful of the obligations toward this ministry. And then Rebecca says, are there really those that are unmindful? And then Paris says, I should say the better half of Salem Village. And then Putnam says, and more than that. And then Paris says, where is my wood? My contract provides I be supplies with firewood. I'm waiting since November for a stick. And even November, I had to show my frostbitten hands like a London beggar. So what it is, okay, here it is. Paris this is wrong. This comment is wrong. Here's the edits. I edited this because this is wrong. Here's the one that's correct. Mine. Two ministers were relieved of their duties before Paris became the minister of Salem. The minister of Salem Church doesn't earn much money. They're given housing and then they're given wood for their fire to keep their house warm as part of the contract. Paris is very afraid of losing his job in pulpit and is demanding here that he get the firewood, which the contract he signed when he became minister says he would get, right? So he's just saying, my contract says I will get wood. Giles says, you are allowed 6 pounds a year to buy wood, Mr. Paris. I regard that pound as part of my salary. I am paid enough without I spend 6 pounds on firewood. Then Paris says, the salary is 62 pounds, Mr. Proctor. I am not some preaching farmer with a book under my arm. I'm a graduate of Harvard College. And then Giles says, A, and well instructed in arithmetic. And I knows how much money he's supposed to be making. Paris says, Mr. Corey, you will look far for a man of my kind at 60 pounds a year. I am not used to this poverty. I left a thrifty business in Barbados to serve the Lord. I do not fathom it. Why am I persecuted here? I cannot offer one proposition, but there be a howling riot of argument. I have often wondered if the devil be in somewhere. I cannot understand you people otherwise. And then Proctor says, Mr. Paris, you are the first minister ever who demanded a deed to his house. And then Paris says, man, doesn't a minister deserve a house to live in? And then Proctor says, to live in, yes, but to ask for ownership is like you shall own the meeting house itself. The last meeting I were at, you spoke of deeds and mortgages. I thought I was at an auction, right? And then Paris says, I want the mark of confidence of all. I am the third preacher in 7 years. See, I told you that is a good point. I did not wish to be put out like a cat whenever some majority feels a whim. You people seem not to comprehend that the minister is the Lord's man in parish. Minister is not so lightly crossed and contradicted. Says Putnam. And then Paris says, there's no obedience or the church will burn like hell is burning. And then Proctor says, can you speak 1 minute without we land in hell again, right? So he says, I'm sick and tired of hearing about hell. And then Paris says, it's not for you to say what is good for you to hear. And then Proctor says, I may speak my heart, I think. And Paris says in a fury, now see how Proctor is making Paris angry. He's actually contradicting Paris and making an enemy of Paris. And Paris is about to bring in all the experts who are going to find out if there's witchcraft. And so Proctor is like literally putting a target on himself right now as he's speaking like this to Paris. And Paris says in a fury, are we Quakers? Are we not Quakers here yet, Mr. Proctor? And you may tell that to your followers. And Proctor says, my followers. And Paris says, now that it's out with it, there's a party in this church. I am not blind. And this is a faction and a party. So he's saying, I know that you have a group of people who are come up against me and that you're not coming to church. Paris is shown to act as a power-hungry man who can only think about himself and his position. But it becomes clear that he is delusional and filled with paranoia, and he generally believes the town is out to get him. So he thinks that Proctor and his friends are out to get him, and he is paranoid. That is true. And then Proctor says, against him and all authority, adds Putnam. So Putnam's on Paris's side. And then Proctor says, why then I must find it and join it. So he's being sarcastic, and this is not a good thing to do. He's saying, oh, well, I'll go find those people who are against you and I'll join them. And there's a stock among them. And then Rebecca says, he doesn't mean that. And Putnam says, he confessed it now. And Proctor says, I mean it solemnly, Rebecca. I like not the smell of this authority. And Rebecca says, no, you cannot speak charity with your minister. You are another kind, John. Clasp his hand, make your peace, right? So there's the end of Act 1. And it all took place upstairs in the bedroom. And it all took place upstairs in the bedroom. And it all, that's the end of Act 1. And it all took place upstairs in the bedroom. And it went in one scene. So don't forget, we have a play, and the play has to be staged. And since the play has to be staged, that means that it costs money, to set up the staging of the play. And in Shakespeare's plays, there was no staging. They had nothing. They didn't own properties that went on the stage. They might have a basket for Friar Lawrence or something like that, but they didn't set up like beds for Juliet to lay on, and they didn't set up like battle scenes, with fires burning in the background, anything like that. It was just a stage, and the way the actors spoke created the illusion of where they were, what the place that they were supposed to be, their environment. But here we're going to have Betty in bed, and we're going to have in front of the bed all these people coming and going, milling about, and then they keep referring to the parlor that's downstairs, and a lot of people are downstairs in the parlor, and some people come up from the parlor, especially when they hear Betty screaming. A lot of people came up, and so there's exits and entrances on the stage in that one scene as it was set. And the second act begins at John Proctor's house. It's going to take place there. And we will have this was lesson 3. The 4th will be Act 2, and I'll have that ready for you in a short bit.